Good afternoon and welcome back to the Story Tree. Today is Easter Saturday, the time in between times, between the horror and the grief of Friday and the unknowing of what is to come tomorrow. The disciples and followers of Jesus have gathered in the upper room, and they are a sorry bunch, terrified, frightened, ridden with guilt and unknowing what's going to happen next. And first of all, in this room we meet Thomas. And Thomas is a man of action, and he's always moving, and he's always thinking, and he's always trying to process everything that happens. And he's walking around, stepping over the legs of people who are lying on the ground, muttering to himself, trying to get his head around the reality of what has happened in this week. Just only over a week ago, he had said to his disciples, to Jesus' disciples, and to Jesus himself, "Let us go with him, that we may die with him." And he intended that he would follow Jesus even to the death. And yet he, like all the others, ran away. And Thomas is consumed by this sense of failure and this sense of letting Jesus down. And eventually it gets too much for him, and he goes to the door and he opens it and he walks out. He's had enough. He cannot cope in this room that has become isolating, even though there's such a crowd has gathered there. And in the corner, huddled with his shawl hung over his head, hiding away not from the others but from himself, is Peter. And Peter is just heartbroken and bereft. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees the face of Jesus looking across him across a courtyard. He sees the knowing look of Jesus as Peter has the third time denied he is a follower of his. And the cock crows, and Peter's world crumbles. He too has failed, and he too ran away, and he too relied on John, who was the only disciple, along with the women, who was able to keep going with Jesus right to the end. And he looks over at John, and of all the people in the room, he seems to be one of the ones that's the calmest. Something has happened to John in this last day, something that has changed him from being the youngest to somehow being the calmest. And he is more attentive to Mary, Jesus' mother. He's more looking out for the others, trying to encourage them, trying to just, even with a hand on his shoulder, trying to say to him, it's okay. We have to trust our master. We don't know what's going on, but we have to trust him. And John is standing there serving, and he is playing out in his mind everything that he saw from those horrible, horrible early hours of the morning, of those trials when Jesus was treated so abysmally. He was brought before a Sanhedrin that was illegal. It was never allowed for there to be one called at such short notice. A trial should have proper preparation. It should have people speaking up for both parties. It should have been done differently. Not even the whole Sanhedrin were there. And John, because of his contacts, was close enough to the door to hear the accusations leveled, to hear the abuse that was shouted at Jesus, to see and even to hear the beatings that he was receiving in each of his trials. First with Caiaphas, and then with Ananias, and then with Pilate, and off to Herod and back to Pilate, and the slow deterioration in Jesus' body as time and time again he is slapped, he is beaten, he is whipped, he is humiliated. And John's heart is breaking. He feels helpless as he is watching this horror unfold. And he is gathered in front of Pilate towards the end when this interaction takes place between Pilate and Jesus about what is truth. And Pilate has been looking for ways to save Jesus, because there's something about this man in front of him that he sees that he's not guilty of the charges presented. And yet Pilate is a coward, and he cannot he cannot stand up to the people. And when the people around John start to shout, crucify him, he and only a few voices are trying to shout all the louder, save him. and the crowd are baying for Barabbas to be freed, and they're screaming for Jesus to be crucified. And the very same people, John recognizes some of them, who actually were laying down their cloaks in front of Jesus only a week before, who were actually taking branches off the trees, who were shouting adulation to him, and it has turned and it has changed in so quick a time. And John feels tears falling down his face as he remembers that road to the hill. Those narrow streets, people crowding in, the soldiers pushing their way through, some people mocking and jeering Jesus and the other criminals who are to be crucified, some people spitting at them and laughing at them, some people crying, even the women crying for those who are dying. And John hears them as Jesus saying, "Don't weep for me, weep for yourselves." Even in those last hours and minutes, Jesus is looking to others, and John is a witness of these things, and John is just being changed from within by the things he's seeing, and he doesn't want to think about the horror of the arms stretched out and the nails driven in. He doesn't want to hear again the screams as pikes are driven into the ankles to hold the bodies into place. He doesn't want to think about those moments, but there are moments within those moments that he does want to remember forever. He and Mary's sister and Mary Magdalene are all gathered at the foot of the cross. And they're watching the lifeblood flow from their beloved Jesus. And they're consumed with grief, and yet there's just something deep and deeper going on. John is recognized by Jesus. He's actually, Jesus through his eyes stinging with blood and sweat and even tears, sees his mother and his beloved disciple, and he says, "Mother, behold your son. Son, behold your mother." He's looking out for his mother even to the end. And John feels a conviction growing within him, and there's one that he will honor to the very end, that he will care for this wonderful woman as if she were his own mother. And he will care for her in these awful hours. And he stands a bit closer, and he stands a bit straighter. And he wants Jesus to see that he will do what he's been asked. And he hears Jesus asking for the wine, that he's thirsty, and he watches as it's handed up to him on a sponge, and he hears the whisper and the overwhelming anger and anguish of the other criminal as he cries out, "Why are you here? Why don't you save yourself and us? Surely you can get us down from here." And the other criminal, even through his own pain, is saying, "Don't you fear God? We deserve to be here. This man has done no wrong." And John hears the interconnection between Jesus and this criminal, because he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come to your kingdom." And Jesus rasps through rattling breath and says, "Today you will be with me in paradise." And John will never forget those words, or the words of Jesus when he cries out in the final anguish and says, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani," my God, why have you forsaken me?" That moment of desolation and separation and isolation that has left Jesus feeling as if he's been abandoned completely, no matter who is around him, and no matter that God has not turned away, but he feels it. He feels that utter desolation consume him. And John weeps with his mother as he hears that, as he watches Jesus' body begin to relax into death, as he hears the final whisper, "Father, into your hand I commend my spirit." And then that ultimate phrase, "It is finished." Death has been quick maybe mercifully slow. Not so much for the criminals whose legs are then broken, to speed their death so that the bodies can be removed before the Passover feast and the Sabbath begins. And they come to Jesus, and John witnesses them take a spear because they realize he's dead, but they have to be sure, because if he's not dead, they are responsible. They have to take the responsibility of the failed execution. And he sees the spear driven into the side, and the water and the blood mixed together. The evidence, as we know now, of heart failure, of the pericardium sac and the blood remaining in his body, flowing from him. He is dead. He is gone. The other criminals are cut down and tossed over the side of the quarry into a deep pit where so many unfortunates are left as well. And Joseph of Arimathea comes up and speaks to the guard and says, "I have here a letter from Pilate. I am taking him to a grave." And the women watch, and John watches, and they make sure to mark where the grave is, because the night is coming in, the time is growing short. They have to prepare the body quickly, but they also have to come back to do it properly, to do it with dignity and the rituals required, not just by law, but by love. And the stone is rolled in front of the cave where Jesus is laid. And as they're leaving, they notice a troop of guards from the temple and from the Romans coming to stay for the night, to make sure that these disciples don't steal the body. And they gather their thoughts and head back to the one place where they have all been together, back to the upper room. And as well as John being calm in that room, there is one other. There is one other who has walked a journey with Jesus. Mary of Magdala. Mary, who so much has been misrepresented about her, so much has been insinuated against her, and yet Mary, who is and was very much at a loss to understand what is going on. Her heart is broken. She looks across to the mother of Jesus, to Mary, and sees the deep heartbreak of a mother who has lost her child. And she looks across to the desolation of Simon Peter, and she looks across to Thomas marching out because he can't cope in this space anymore. And she resolves that there are things that she must do. And she prepares herself, and she goes up to Mary, and Mary, the mother of Jesus, but also the other Mary, the wife of Clopas, and they start to make plans. And they start to make provision. They need to get the oils, and they need to gather the essential things for a proper burial. And they gather themselves, and Mary, the mother of Jesus, brings out a treasure that she has kept for many years, since Jesus was a baby, the small jar of very expensive myrrh that was a treasure gift from the kings from the east, and was given in preparation for his burial. And so she prepares to bring that. They can't do it yet. The Sabbath is still in full flow. They have shared some form of meal together, but it's subdued and it is silent. But as the others settle for the night to try and find sleep, the women gather in their own space, prepared to get up early, prepared to go out into the world, prepared to go to the tomb and get Jesus' remains properly seen to. Thank you.